Most of the problems on this rundown aren't widespread, thankfully. They are minor gripes which can be ignored by most players. However, small these problems first appear though, they're symptomatic of wider fundamental issues with video gaming at large. Namely, these complaints when taken together point towards strategies that encourage player addiction and consumer exploration to maximize money spent by players. Overabundance of open worlds. Some of the most widely popular and successfully designed games in history are open world. Titles such as Grand Theft Auto, Horizon, Zelda Breath of the Wild demonstrate open worlds littered with intrigue and activity. Problem is that open world game design is often seen by developers as a golden ticket to commercial success. A tried and tested formula to mix up gameplay under the belief fans are clamoring for games eschewing linear design. Case in point, the upcoming Sonic Frontiers. Now, it's savvy to not get carried away here. Frontiers released gameplay footage is of an early build after all. But it just seems to me that Sonic's heritage as blistering speedster isn't suited to the open world. Always online single-player games. Persistent online authentication, always on DRM, whatever you call it, requires players maintain continuous online connection to play a game, which is doubly frustrating for single-player games with no online or multiplayer content whatsoever. It's reportedly a means to eliminate video game piracy, but as history shows, pirates always find a way to pillage. Furthermore, the negative effects of games requiring persistent online authentication for well-meaning consumers outweighs the positives. Always on DRM exposes servers to extra glitch potential. A failure in server connection effectively locks players out of their game. Not everyone has access to the internet 100% of the time. Free content hidden behind microtransactions. The model of free-to-play games is more aptly described as free to start playing, but pay to win. Incentivizing players to purchase microtransactions for a game they haven't paid anything for is fair enough. Games are a business after all, but players shouldn't have to splash out on powerful gear to gain a competitive advantage. Games that pursue this revenue model should do so in a way that doesn't discourage or disenfranchise players who haven't spent as much on microtransactions. Live service games removing content. Live service games' conveyor belt of content is a design choice to encourage endless play. Of course, many of these games are free to play, but for games like Destiny 2, this isn't always the case. There are players who conceivably stumped up full price for the game, plus costs for multiple season passes. Now, the reality is there's paid for content that is now eternally obsolete, or vaulted, as Bungie would prefer it to be known. Is deleting content players have paid for ethically acceptable? Is there really a justification for permanently removing expensive content? The discontent is justifiable for Destiny 2 players because Bungie did not state their plans to delete content at the outset. Timed bonus gear. Completing a never-ending list of daily challenges to collect ever more powerful weapons, superficial skins, custom finishes, whatever, in free-to-play games or live service games is one of their core gameplay loops. It's a hamster in a wheel players can't dismount. But more powerful weapons aside, all these extras are mere status symbols, and the encouragement to grind before they're removed can be problematic. Loot boxes. Yes, like shooting fish in a barrel this entry. The problem with loot boxes are well established by now. Their randomness, repeatability, and in-your-face promotion bear more than a passing resemblance to gambling. Loot boxes' unethical nature has already seen them outlawed in certain European countries, with hopefully more countries to follow. They're a blight on the industry, seen as preying on the vulnerable. At a minimum though, they're just another way for developers to scalp more money from players. Buggy unfinished games on launch. Game development has become increasingly complex in recent years, with publishers and investors growing progressively more impatient to release games and begin the process to recoup costs and turn a profit, no matter the finished state of the game. In short, This needs to stop. Gamers the world over are sick of pre-ordering games, only to serve as playtesters until the game's issues are ironed out in subsequent patches. Multiple game editions. This isn't a problem per se, more a grievance. More choice isn't always a bad thing. Some players will be content with digital only, others might clamor for the Super Deluxe Steelbook edition with art books and figurine. To each their own. The issues arise when it's unclear what exactly is included in each edition. When developers need to release spreadsheets itemizing exactly what perks are included in each edition, then it's gone too far. Minority culture of toxicity and entitlement. A problem with the internet, and dare I say society at large, is the unsavory behaviors of a subsect of individuals. Games, in their most online nature, unfortunately seem to suffer from these types of people more than most. Like with abuse hurled out across social media, there are still too many people hiding behind the veil of anonymity the internet presents. Granted, it's a minority of people, and this rundown isn't here to list all the things wrong with the shady beliefs people put forth on the internet. A softer, more tangible example which we all encounter is the unbelievable sense of entitlement gamers can exhibit. Case in point, the reaction following Sony's recent State of Play livestream was an endless barrage of garbage. Where's Bloodborne 2? Sony's finished. Honestly, just grow up. Insane patch file sizes. A symptom of the always connected nature of modern video games is the endless availability of patch updates. Not always a bad thing, of course. For micro updates that'll improve performance or security, those are always welcome. However, turning on your console to be welcomed by a 40GB update certainly isn't welcome. They're oftentimes unexpected and they take considerable time to download. Waiting to install a new game. Yes, waiting to install a game can be just as annoying as insane patch file sizes, but the waiting is even worse when you've bought the game on disc. Of course, certain video games are so vast in scope that their file sizes physically can't fit onto CDs. Suppose the olden days of needing to install 6 discs before you can play is still worse than it is nowadays. Just wish games could install quicker than they do. Multiple publisher accounts required. Recent years have seen a trend for publishers to require you to sign up for an account with them in order to play their games. It's not enough to only have an account with PlayStation, Xbox, Steam, etc., but Bethesda, EA, Blizzard, Rockstar all push their accounts onto you simply as a means to funnel content to you away from the digital storefront you originally purchased the game from. Plus, when passwords inevitably need resetting and you'll inevitably have forgotten your login details, then it's yet another barrier in the way of simply playing the game. Price of games, consoles, and hardware. It's no secret the price of video games is skyrocketing. The price of games alone seem to go up, with consoles and PC hardware prices eye-wateringly high, pricing many a gamer out. The ever-increasing price makes it more challenging for consumers to assert value to a game. It seems like there's a need for games to pass a certain threshold in terms of graphics or playtime in order for it to be worth the cost. It's a tough thing for developers to balance, sure, as to be fair, the cost of raw materials, labor, energy seem to be on an eternal upward trend too. Developers bloating games to 100+ hours. This point falls into the realms of perceived consumer value discussed in the price of gaming entry in the rundown. In order to meet expectations, developers are increasingly stuffing their games with enough content to keep players busy for multiple, if not pushing hundreds of hours. The knock-on effect of this is a lot of content is repetitive, unimaginative, or just plain boring. There's a lot to be said about concise, compact, well-designed experiences that don't take 50+ hours to complete. It is completely understandable, though, that there are players who want the most bang for their buck. There's no real solution to this problem unless the prices plateau, which seems highly unlikely. Misleading marketing. This is such a broad topic that it could probably have its own feature. Yeah, as players, we're bombarded with persuasive gameplay reveals, cinematic trailers, and story announcements which just don't resemble the finished project. Hell, even character appear trailers who then go on to be largely absent from the action altogether. Looking at you, Joel in Last of Us 2 trailer. For The Last of Us' sequel, Naughty Dog stuck Joel in a pivotal cinematic preview to misdirect players who were trying to guess the game's narrative beats before release. It's a bit cheeky to say the least, with games being marketed to appear a certain way to secure our pre-orders, but then backtrack come release day? Then there's only one way to describe this, and it's misleading. It's immoral, and it has to stop. Did you know? We at GamingBolt upload new videos every day. Stick around, drop a like, subscribe, and let us know what kind of content you'd like to see in the future with a comment below.